If you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll bring you the mic. Tell us where you're from and what's your question. Okay, you got a question?
Jared Henry, Mackey, Church of the Nazarene. My question has to do with our polity, somewhat. If and what's going on in the United Methodist Church with their splintering, if an ordained elder in the Church of the Nazarene is advocating publicly for gay marriage or the practice of homosexuality, and the district fails to deal with that, in other words, they don't take their credentials, what takes place after that? In other words, what recourse, because our manual says the district takes care of credentials, and so I just wondered what recourse there may be at that point.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to answer the deeper question behind it. And that is, where are we standing right now on LGBTQ issues? Our manual is very clear on this, and our position is very clear. We have a strong position on the sacredness of human sexuality. So back in 2017, if you weren't there, you missed one of the most extraordinary moments in my lifetime in the Church of the Nazarene. And that was when our assembly, General Assembly from 160 plus countries of the world, in addition to that, the cultural differences, the language barriers, you can imagine how hard it is to pass legislation with understanding. But 97% of that group voted on a clear position on human sexuality. And what was beautiful about that position is it's not just talking about what we're against. It's talking about what we're for. It's talking about what's beautiful about human sexuality and what God intended to be good. I'm biased, but I think it's one of the most poetic and beautifully written statements I've ever read on a biblical understanding of human sexuality. And if you haven't read it, you need to go read it, because it might clear some things up for you about where we stand. We have a clear position, okay? But we also have a posture. And our posture is what Dr. Chenoweth was talking about earlier, and that is we are people of perfect love. We're people filled with the love of God, and we want to invite people from all walks of life to be part of our fellowship. I'm not talking about membership. I'm not talking about leadership in the church, but we open our arms to people no matter what their sin may be. And we say, if we push people away and we say we abide this kind of sin, but we don't abide this sin, then we will have failed in this moment that we're in culturally. So we are the church, all right? So we have a position and we have a posture. But here's what I find a lot. I find myself talking to people who are only position people, or they're only posture people. So the position people are the people who say, we know what we believe, and they know completely what our position is, but they don't have any love in their life. And so they come across as harsh and critical and angry and judgmental. And brother and sister, I'm just going to say this. Our indignation is not going to win the world. On the other hand, we have people who are just posture people. And they don't care much about a biblical position. They just care that we love every person and accept every person, and God's going to be okay with all of that. But if you're that person, then what you come across is as just being someone who is kind of aimless, and it doesn't have any holiness in it. It just has kind of a soft, permissive love. We are neither in the Church of the Nazarene. We are both people of a position and people of a posture. And one of the things I'm constantly trying to help our people do, and when you're standing in the middle of that, it's easy to get pot shots. But we have to stand in the middle of saying we are people of both. And when we're only one or the other, we've lost our position and our posture. We balance truth and grace together. Jesus said, be people of grace and truth, of truth and grace. It's a hard balance to maintain. Now, to the other question, do we have people in the Church of the Nazarene who are credentialed, who are advocating a different position or a different posture? We have people on both sides. There's not a lot. I think there's this narrative out there that there's this just huge uprising, and because of social media, there's lots and lots and lots of things that are out in the open that never used to be out in the open. It used to be when somebody wanted to make a statement, all they could do is go to the coffee shop and talk to 3 people, and it was done. Now people who almost have no platform, they can immediately say something and the whole world knows about it, or, is lobbying for it. Jared mentioned the fact we have a process. And that is, if there is a problem with a credentialed minister who can no longer abide the position or the posture or is advocating something that is not in harmony with our polity and our doctrine. And by the way, when I say doctrine, this is a really long answer, but this is an important question. When I say doctrine, I'm not just talking about the articles of faith. I'm including in doctrine, Nazarene doctrine includes, in my mind, the covenant of Christian conduct and the covenant of Christian character. Nazarene doctrine is all of our belief put together. But there is a process. There is a process of bringing people to a group of folks to investigate. There's investigative processes. That's a good process. It works. It is a disciplined process, and it has helped us clear up things. It's also helped us to be able to determine who is no longer with us on this issue. And then if somebody isn't with us, we bless them and say, there might be another place for you to serve, but it's not in the Church of the Nazarene. So what happens if the process doesn't work in some people's mind? And the answer to that is, that's the only process we have. And those investigative boards, they're doing everything that they can to get all the details of everything that's being said. I think there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, that's being too dramatic. I think there are some who are not wise on social media. If somebody has honest questions about these things and they're struggling to try to figure out where they are, and they want to talk to leadership about that or help people walk them through it, that's the way to do it. But the way not to do it is to argue this on social media. And it doesn't do any good for that person. It doesn't do any good for the church. So pastors and lay people, let's find the right way to talk about these things. But we do trust our process. It may or may not be everything that everybody wants it to be in the end, but I believe that as I've looked out across the entire global Church of the Nazarene, that it is a process that works. And is it perfect? No. We've had, and I'm not going to go into details or names, but we've had some situations where some decisions have been made and some things have been held for just a process of waiting and trying to determine what's best and next steps. If a pastor continues to advocate even after that goes on, then it might be time. It's time for more conversations. So that's the long answer, and I gave you more than you asked for there. But I want you to know that the Board of General Superintendents, we have not backed up 1 inch from our position and our posture. And I can't speak for the next, I don't know what the next board will have different general superintendents, but I can tell you this board is 100% behind what that General Assembly did, and we are strong on that. So I want you to know that. We are strong on our position, and we're strong on our posture. So God help us to be able to maintain balance. Sorry for the long answer, Jared. All right, other questions? Where are you from? What's your question?
Okay, my name is Richard Potts, and I'm from the Washington Church of the Nazarene. So my question is about the Confucius Center that is at Northwest Nazarene University. Why would they have a Confucius Center there, which is normally a part of the Communist Chinese Party? They use these to steal research, information, things like that. Why would we embrace anything like that as far as the university would be concerned? What would be the point of that?
Okay. First of all, Washington, do you also go to the library? And like my mom still calls them pictures on the wall, pictures. So number one, I've not heard of that. I've never heard about what you're referring to from NNU, but let me say this about all of our universities in the USA. Universities, especially right now in this environment, it can be wieldy, it can be unwieldy, it's hard to manage that. We've got people coming in from all students. Every student that comes to a Nazarene college or Nazarene University is not a believer. It does, in fact, there's a lot of them who come with their own particular viewpoints. However, I can tell you this: while there are instances, I think, where there might be a faculty member, or there might be a student who makes a statement or actually says or does something that would not be in harmony with the Church of the Nazarene, I believe 100% every single one of our presidents, including NBC and NTS, every one of them are completely committed to our Nazarene identity. The Board of General Superintendents meets with the university presidents every year for 3 or 4 hours. We talk about the common challenges that are being faced, legal challenges, governmental challenges, accreditation challenges, cultural challenges. And I can say with what I believe 100% confidence that our presidents are completely with our church. Now, all of those universities, there's not, the authority of the university comes from the trustees. It doesn't come from the Board of General Superintendents. It comes from the trustee boards. But I know the hearts of our presidents, and I'm convinced that our presidents are excellent, outstanding leaders, and they are with the Church of the Nazarene. Okay? Yes, sir.
Pastor Chet from Wellspring here in Evansville. Quick question. You were talking earlier about the globe that the generals lay their hands on. Is that the actual globe that they originally laid their hands on? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, it is. It's, from what I understand, it is.
Wow. That's all I had.
Yeah.
Just
So let me tell you
controversial.
the backstory very quickly. It's a great story. So obviously before technology, they had to look at the world on the globe, and they used that for years and years and years and years, and then it got put away and nobody knew where it went. And when I was the chair of the Board of General Superintendents a couple of years ago, somebody came to me and they said, "We found the globe." And I said, "Where's it been?" They said, "It's been in storage." So I said, "Bring it back up to the Board of General Superintendents boardroom." And so it's there along with a lot of historical other things. One of the things I love about the boardroom, if you've never been to Kansas City, we invite you to the Global Ministry Center, and there's a lot to see there. But when you go into the Board of General Superintendents area, you go into the boardroom and you'll see all kinds of historical documents, including there's a Bible that's there where the signatures of all the general superintendents going all the way back to V.H. Lewis is there. And there's actually a ceremony that goes on both with the current board, and when a new general superintendent comes in, they're essentially inducted into that board, and you also invite emeriti who are there. Wow. And at that moment, you're prayed for, you're blessed, you sign that Bible. Once in a while, I'll pull that Bible out and I'll look at all of those names in cursive, and I'll go out and I'll look at, I was number 40. So I go back and I look from Brazil all the way down to the people who have preceded me, and it's a very humbling, but it's a very enriching thing to do. It's a privilege to get to do that.
Wow. Thank you.
Thanks.
She was first.
Somebody over here while we're waiting? All right.
I just had a question on the General Assembly.
What's your name and where are you from?
Cindy Crump, SWID, go SWID. So on the General Assembly, I understand there's still like embassy issues and stuff in getting our foreign delegates to the Assembly. At what point will you have to call it yes or no if it will happen? And how is all that going to work?
It's a very good question. So 2023 General Assembly is going to happen. So I'm glad I didn't get my way, because I was advocating for 1 year postponement, and boy, was I wrong. So I'm so glad we waited 2 years, because the thing that I didn't account for was not just the pandemic, but the fact that people trying to get visas to come into the U.S., I've been told that there's some that won't get visas even to apply for until January of 2023. So it's always an issue. It always has been. People can still struggle. I'm going to try to keep it balancing here. It's always a struggle to get people to the U.S. But this year is going to be particularly hard. And so one of the things that we need to pray for is that some of the folks who've been elected as delegates from the other world areas, that they will be able to get their visas to come to the U.S. And one of the ways we tried to help with that, we've done two things. One of the things is that we have outside USA, Canada, we don't have to do it in USA because people aren't going to have to get a visa to come in. But we are going to have caucuses before the General Assembly in every single region where people can go, the people who've been elected, and they can address, they're not voting on things, but they can address the big topics that are coming to the General Assembly. So that if they cannot come, the people who can come to represent them will have their interest in mind. And all of that will be recorded and brought to and shared with the committee meetings that they would have been a part of. That's number one. The second thing that's happened is we've asked, we're not trying to change the voting process at all in all these other countries for delegates, but we're simply saying, be sure that at the very least your alternates are people who already have visas. There's lots of people around the world who are Nazarenes who already have their U.S. visas. They're good church people. So in that regard, I think we're going to have a good representation. But we made so much progress in 2017. I don't want to see us, in terms of being an international church, and I don't want to see us take a step back. So I'm glad you raised that question, and I invite you to join us in praying about what I think is an important issue for us to have a truly representative General Assembly in 2023.
Damon from Peter Switch, just to piggyback that question, I know in the past, all the departments, NYI was very cutting edge, and they had voting sites in different areas of the world. Why doesn't the General Assembly do the same thing? Because you seem like they would be able to get, I know they can't get into America, but they can get into the other places in the worldwide and vote there. Why is there some like bylaw that we can't do that, or?
Yes, there is, yeah. It's a good question. NYI, the complexity of an NYI convention is not nearly as great as the complexity of a General Assembly in terms of how legislation gets done and passed. So that's number one. We actually addressed that question with our parliamentarian. He's one of the best parliamentarians in the world. And he's been with us now for several General Assemblies. He knows the Church of the Nazarene like the back of his hand in terms of polity, and he knows Robert's rules and all of that, obviously. We did a study with him about a year ago on what would be the possibility of having remote sites for General Assembly. And this man who's seen polity from around the world, he's in the top percentage of parliamentarians in the entire world. He said it's a virtual impossibility for us to do what we do at General Assembly and to be remote at the same time. He didn't feel like it was possible, and there's lots and lots of reasons why. Let's turn the cameras off for a second, okay? Let's turn off the live stream. Let me know when it's off.